Good evening, Franklin Township. This is Bill Bowman from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
And this is PJ Parker from the same Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
And welcome to the October 25th edition of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour.
And tonight, our featured host, our featured speaker is Mr. Ed Potosnak, who is the head of the League of Conservation Voters, as well as a town councilman. And he's going to give us an overview of energy aggregation. What is it? We're voting on it. It's on the ballot. It needs to be an informed decision. So we're going to ask Ed some questions. We're going to invite you to ask Ed some questions. Bill, how does somebody want to comment and get that across?
Comment in the comment section, and we'll be able to see it. And we'll, if you're lucky, we'll put you up on the screen.
Whoa, okay. You have it, Franklin. You want to know what this is all about? As opposed to, oh gosh, energy aggregation is on the ballot. I don't know what it means. I'm not going to vote for it. Or, oh, it's probably good because it's on the ballot, so I am going to vote for it. Let's be informed. Let's know what it's all about, and let's see if it's a good thing for us as individuals, if it's a good thing for our town. And we're going to welcome Ed Potosnak in to give us that overview. And before we do that, we are also going to remind you that the Franklin Reporter and Advocate is your local independent news source, 24/7 website, franklinreporter.com, with a little button that you can access the Franklin Reporter and Advocate in over 100 languages. I am so proud of that, Franklin. Make sure you take a look at that. We also invite you to become part of our morning report audience, and there is also a button on the front page of franklinreporter.com where you can just enter your email. It's free to you to get every morning around 5 o'clock the day's top stories, the best fuel prices in the area, and traffic. So we ask you to tune in for that as well. And don't forget to pick up your monthly digest newspaper. And that is at over 30-something locations in our community, including Stop and Shop, and ShopRite, Wawa, 7-Eleven, many, many other locations. We are your hometown news source, and we invite you to become part of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate family. So Bill.
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to invite Ed or am I?
I'm going to invite Ed, yes. These ridiculous things here. Hello there, Mr. Ed Potosnak. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How about you?
We're doing fine. Well, I'm doing fine. I don't know how PJ's doing.
I'm doing great.
Okay.
My dogs are quiet. I'm always doing great.
Thanks for coming on for our news hour. As many of you know, Ed is a Township Councilmember, as well as being in his day job, the executive director of the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, which is headquartered in Franklin Township. How about that?
No, we moved.
Oh, you did? Where'd you move to?
We're in Hamilton, just outside of Trenton.
Oh, okay.
It was very nice. Thank you.
Oh, well. You're a Franklinite, so we'll forgive your move.
Yeah, right.
So the burning question, Ed, what is energy aggregation? What should we know about it? Why is it a good thing? Maybe it's not a good thing. What does the Franklin Township person who's going to go and vote on this ballot item?
Well, first of all,
what does this person need to know?
I want to say thanks again for having me, for all that you do for the community and raising awareness. And I just want to be very frank. I'm very supportive of energy aggregation. It's a way for us in the local community to take control of our energy purchasing decisions and help save residents money. In fact, a yes vote on the upcoming ballot question, if you haven't voted already, would mean you'd save at least 5% on your energy supply. That's separate from your energy delivery. We can talk about that probably a little bit later. And then also we're going to be getting 10% more renewable energy than the state currently requires, which is around 22%. So it's good news for your wallet, good news for the planet and the air that you breathe, reducing pollution in communities, and helping to do our part to stave off climate change and the most devastating impacts of more frequent storms, including flooding, which we suffer too much from in Franklin Township, as some of my neighbors are still out of their homes from Hurricane IDA. So that's basically what it is in a high-level view, and I'm happy to drill down more if you want to hear more specifics.
Yes.
Yeah, what are the basics? I mean, what exactly is being aggregated? I mean, this is just for electricity, right? This isn't for natural gas.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize too that PSE&G, who supplies our energy, actually, I should be more specific. PSE&G delivers our energy. So that means they're responsible for the wires, the meter, billing of our electric usage will not change if we aggregate our energy. What will change is where we're buying our energy from. Right now, if you haven't chosen a third-party supplier for your energy, which most people haven't, your energy is being provided by a default provider that PSE&G has selected. And that's, basically PSE&G is a Trenton-based or approved energy monopoly for Franklin Township. They're the only deliverer, and in this case, if you don't choose your own provider, what we'd be doing is saying, we're going to take all the power, purchasing power from 22,000 households in town, aggregate them together, add them together, and then go out to bid to see if we can buy our energy at a cheaper price, and it has a more renewable content as well, and then save residents money by doing that. So we're using, it's called a bulk purchasing power agreement. Our bulk purchasing, all of us together, going out to bid in a competitive market to try to get a lower price with more renewable energy than PSE&G's default provider is providing us. But again, the supply is still going to be like to your home, the wires, any repairs, power outages from storms. The delivery, rather, is still going to be through PSE&G. So this is just, I want to use my words carefully, the supply side, who's producing the power, where we're buying it, and then the delivery would be through PSE&G. And we would only do that if we can save 5% and we can get 10% more renewable energy. And if that bids don't come back that way, then we will not be aggregating our energy. So the yes vote on this authorizes or demands that council take that action to establish an ordinance that would require us to go out to bid to save money for more renewable energy. Mm-hmm. That's what folks are voting for or against in the upcoming election.
Save 5% of what?
Save 5% of what the current electricity rate is for the supply of energy. So let's say right now, I want to use like a reasonable number. It costs 7 cents a kilowatt hour when you pay on your bill for the energy supply. That means however it's being made, solar, wind, nuclear, natural gas facility, you're paying 7%, 7 cents rather. On top of that, the delivery charge, let's say, is 12 cents. They add up to maybe 19 cents that you're paying per kilowatt hour.
Per hour.
The 12 cents would stay the same. What we would go out to bid on is the supply, how the energy is made for the 7 cents. And if we can save 5% or 0.035 cents, then we would be okay with that. And that adds up to 5% savings on the supply side on your bill. So cheaper bills, more renewable energy.
But
This is basically a bulk purchasing.
Correct. Together, all the households have purchasing power rather than any of us, which is allowed by law to choose a third-party supplier ourselves. We can get together, and because there's so much more, like Costco, things are cheaper sometimes in bulk, and that's what we would be looking for. And we wouldn't do it unless we could save money at that 5% mark.
But is that going to result in any meaningful savings? 5% of 7 cents a kilowatt hour?
It really depends on how much you use. I don't have, like sort of a sample bill, but basically what you would do on your bill, you can look at the portion where it says how much your energy is, and then they break down price to compare for third-party providers. And it's over on like the side of the bill, and it says X cents. Well, you take 5% of that to know your kilowatt hour savings, and then you multiply that by your total usage to get the total dollar amount. So, and you could save significant amounts of money over the course of a year if you're spending hundreds of dollars each month on electricity.
Right. And do you have any sort of case studies of other maybe towns in New Jersey that have done this,
Well,
that have experienced savings?
Yeah, this is electricity only. You can do this with gas. That's not what the question is about. And there have been a lot of successful bulk purchasing agreements through energy aggregation. In fact, years ago, some towns went out and they were able to get 100% of their energy through renewable sources like solar and wind at a cheaper price than the electricity delivery company was charging in their default provider. So that's pretty amazing. You both saved money and got 100% renewable energy. The market shifts. Energy is kind of complicated. We see what's happening overseas right now in this current climate. We know what's happening at the gas pump with energy prices. It's a little bit unpredictable. That's why we're kind of creating this 5% at least saving and 10% at least more renewable energy as the sort of threshold before we enter into a bulk purchasing agreement if it's approved. But yeah, they were able to save money and get more renewable energy. And that's not only good for the planet, it's good for your wallet.
Mm-hmm. And what's the renewable energy component for Franklin if it's approved?
So for Franklin, right now, we would be getting 10% more. So at the current requirement, it'd be 32% renewable energy versus what the PSE&G default provider would provide at 22%. And I should mention one other thing I didn't at the outset, which is we're also on the public question asking to set up a 100% renewable option, which would be available to residents of Franklin if they chose to opt in. You wouldn't be default, put into that group. You would actually have to say, I'm willing to pay whatever that price is for 100% clean energy. Likely now that's more money. So folks would have to really say, I'm willing to pay more to do more to help my community and the environment. We don't know what that's going to be in the out years or in the future, but that definitely is something that will be attractive to a number of families. And I know in Franklin, there are a lot of people who have already chosen this option with a third-party provider. But by doing a bulk or a larger or aggregate population, we hope to save them even more money so that rather than paying their current rate, they could pay a little bit more by getting together with their neighbors who want to do 100% clean energy and renewable energy for themselves. So that's important. The other thing I'd mention I didn't is the way that the law of the state of New Jersey is, it requires everyone in town to automatically be enrolled in the program to make it work, right? So 22,000 households have more buying power. So we can't, hope they click on a link and join in. We basically are going out and saying, we're going to take all of our families, all of our residences and sign them up for this. There is a way to get out of it in the first 60 days when if we were successful saving 5% with 10% more renewable energy, folks would have the option of saying, I don't want to do it. I'd rather pay more for dirtier energy. That's okay. You just fill out a form and you wouldn't be enrolled. If you do nothing, you would automatically be enrolled in the savings and a higher clean energy content.
Okay, what's the downside?
Yeah,
And
so
why hasn't it been done prior to right now?
Yeah, I think that in the early stages, folks really didn't know how it was going to shake out. I think, look, people are very skeptical when other people make decisions for them. And by doing energy aggregation, they will be giving up potentially a choice to choose a third party because we'll be kind of negotiating that for them. But most people aren't doing that anyway. So there might be some hesitation there. I think there's just general fears. People think, oh, big government telling me what to do. But I want to refute that really clearly. Right now, big government or the big utility is already, if you're not choosing a third-party provider already for your energy, then you are already being told what to do. Someone already is making a decision for you. And you're doing it, without even knowing when you're paying your bill to default to that. I think it's called BGS or something like that PSE&G has contracted with. With Franklin Township getting together, we think we can save more money and have a better, cleaner, greener product. And, that's why we're going that route. So, most folks are not really giving up an option because they're not exercising that option now. And the other thing I'll mention is at any time with 30 days notice, you can withdraw from the program. So, once you're in, if you feel like you don't want to be in it anymore, you'd rather pay more, or the pricing changes, it's not worth it, you can change. You could pick your own third-party supplier and go on the website and look through all the folks that are available. So there is still a lot of personal choice and freedom, even as we aggregate the energy. But we know most people don't do anything. They just pay their bill. And that's what we want to take advantage of and leverage across the community.
So what happens if the price that you've negotiated becomes more than the price that PSE&G would charge?
Yeah, so two things. One, you'll get notice. They're not allowed to raise the price over what the default provider for PSE&G provides without giving you a notice and a chance to opt out, right? More likely what would happen is not that the price for the aggregate energy would go up. What would happen is PSE&G would somehow, through their negotiated rate, do something much cheaper. And that could happen. And then everyone who's enrolled would get a letter. It would say you have in 60 days, this will become effective, where PSE&G is going to be charging through their default provider less. If you want to opt out, here's the procedure. And that's required in the law, and any ordinance that we pass would also have that similar requirement. We think it's unlikely, which is why we built in the 5%. These are all conversations we had. A group of community activists actually filed a petition to put a question on the ballot. And in talking with them, we wanted to make sure it fit Franklin, that having that 5% savings threshold would also be a little bit of a cushion in the event that rates go down on the energy supply side through PSE&G, that it wouldn't kick everyone into getting a letter and having to need to take some extra step. We don't want to burden folks, and we think that's responsible given the trends of energy prices, that we won't be in that situation. But if it did, folks would have the option, and we would take a pretty aggressive role to let them know how to save more money, which is important to families.
Right.
So PSE&G remains an autonomous sourcing still. They are not conjoined in this project, or are they?
They're still part of the delivery. So the wires above our roads or underground, again, the meter, any kind of outages, PSE&G on the delivery side, which is what you pay them for, that's all the same. That will not change at all. So folks don't need to worry if, who to call in a blackout, or if, the energy is unable to be supplied, they'll pick up that difference.
Now, what happens to, let's say, their service contracts, such as the worry-free program, where a consumer can opt for X number of home appliances to be covered with, I believe it's parts and labor, for an additional monthly charge. And if you have several appliances, it's not inexpensive, but in the end, it can save you a lot of money. What happens to those programs? Are you then divorced from PSE&G or whoever your carrier is in its entirety? Are they part of this? Are they umbrellaed underneath this energy aggregation, or are they just like totally separate entity?
I would think of it as a big pie, and one little sliver, if your bill has all these extra things, is actually the production of the energy. I'm saying goodbye to some folks. The other part of the pie are all the other things. Maybe you have worry-free. Maybe you're on budget bill. Maybe you've got a loan. PSE&G offers energy efficiency loans at zero interest. Folks should look into that. It's a great way to save money. It's the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use. And that's the energy you save insulating your house and getting new windows. And there are programs available. All of that stays the same. So, PSE&G is agreeing to provide the same bill. The supply portion will change. And if we're part of an energy program that's aggregated, if it passes and we get a successful bid that meets our criteria, then same thing, you just pay your bill, and it'll have all those worry-free things, budget billing, if you have a loan, a whole bunch of things that are offered on that bill will be unchanged. It's still paying one bill, simplified. So you're,
in essence, still paying whoever your carrier is.
Yeah, and PSE&G is then writing
the purchasing side of this particular portion of it.
And they collect the money, and then they write the check to the provider that we've determined for our municipality.
So
Okay.
PSE&G is a delivery system.
Correct.
Stays the delivery system. It's just
No change.
now the PSE&G is not the provider of electricity, though.
Not anymore. For years, it hasn't been that way.
Okay.
We called it deregulation of the
Okay.
energy and gas supply, or something called decoupling, where they decouple delivery or deregulate delivery from production. They used to do both, and then you had no choice.
Right.
And wisely, I think the state of New Jersey said, you know what, it'd be good to have some competition for energy prices on the supply side. Who makes the energy? And let's separate out the delivery to your home from that supply. And that's what allowed things like energy aggregation, bulk purchasing, to come into being.
So the PSE&G's bottom line is not changing because they get their money from the delivery.
Correct.
Gotcha.
I mean, they might take a cut. I don't know the legalities of it on the supply because they're negotiating that with a third-party supplier. But I don't think they haven't really been opposed to this in any way because they're still getting the supply funds, money for that.
What are some of the objections that you have been hearing?
Really, unfortunately, I haven't heard a lot about this. And, given my profile in the community, working on environmental issues as, I do during my day job, I expected to get a lot more Facebook messages, Twitter messages, Instagram, phone calls, text messages, emails about the question. And I haven't, which makes me concerned that folks aren't paying enough attention, or concerned that they're just discounting it right off the go. But actually pretty optimistic that, look, I live in Franklin Township. I know people care a lot about the environment. We have a great open space program. Over 30% of our lands are preserved in perpetuity for recreation and farming and forests. That's a big part of the beauty of our community. And they're pretty environmentally supportive. And I think the question sounds pretty straightforward. You're going to save 5%. You're going to get 10% more renewable energy. It should be a no-brainer, and folks are just being supportive. So I have a little bit of worry. It keeps me up at night, and a lot of optimism, I guess I would say.
Yes.
And we're going to look out as well from the municipality and council. And I speak, I think, for myself, but I would be joined with my council members. If it passes and we write the ordinance, that we're going to make sure that we keep costs and these changes in mind if it were to somehow be more expensive, and the responsibility of the third-party provider that we select through aggregation to notice people. We think that's really important. But getting more clean energy is going to be great too at 10%, and those people who choose 100% is going to be an amazingly positive impact for our environment.
How difficult is it?
I still would like to know. We've all been energy conscious for ages. Why now?
Well, I think I mentioned a group of about 5 petitioners with, I don't know what the threshold was, but it was hundreds of signatures of Franklin Township residents, basically delivered them to the municipal clerk, which required a question to go on the ballot this November. And the question that was originally written was rewritten in cooperation with members of council and the petitioners, the 5 people who filed on behalf of the hundreds of people who signed the petition, to come up with a version that would work well for our community. The other version probably would have costed homeowners more. It could have been more aggressive, and we were concerned about that. So we wanted to do it in a way that was both fiscally responsible, knowing our community and the incomes of different families and the strain for lower and moderate income families that getting more renewable energy could have, with the balance of trying to do something good for the environment. And that's why we put together, working with them, and this was really a great experience, this 5% savings threshold with the 10% more renewable energy as the sort of parameters for us going into contract with an aggregated energy supplier.
And what's the opposition been, if any?
When you map out who would be opposed to this, there's no big stakeholder except for the default provider, that no one really knows who they are on the energy bill. I haven't really heard of any, and we didn't anticipate any because, they still have, we have many more steps in this process, and I think we need to be responsible back to our community for doing what we can to, pull people's purchasing power together to make a positive impact on, the bills they pay, et cetera. So I haven't really seen any. And
Okay, the reason I'm asking is that it's an opt-out feature.
Wait, hang on.
What's going on there?
You got a cleaning crew in there or something?
Not here.
They're doing some construction upstairs, so I muted.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I didn't know where that was coming from.
Circulating saw.
Oh my God.
All right, go ahead, Peach.
I forgot what I was saying.
Do you think about it? I just want to know how difficult. You say you fill out a form. How difficult is it for people who don't want to opt in to opt out? Is it an online thing or?
It's pretty straightforward. It's a form. There will be likely in today's day and age a portal online and a way to submit it in paper as well for folks who prefer to do that. And we'll have that information. There's a number of steps before we get to that, right? We have to, citizens should send a strong message to council. They want to support this. We want to be lockstep with the residents of Franklin Township. This only applies to residents. This is not for commercial. So this is just for people and their families. And then the next step would be passing an ordinance. And then we would have to go out to bid. It would have to meet our criteria. And then there would be a time frame window before it was instituted. Folks would, let's say, join it by, through the automatic sort of sign up, which is what happens. And then if they wanted to opt out at that time, they would have a window period before it starts, and then with 30 days notice at any time to fill out a form or go online and say, I don't want to be part of this anymore. Stick me back into the PSE&G program, or sign up for someone else or some other company that they've researched and found met their needs better.
I think that's what I was getting at. Why, given the parameters of what you've been describing, would anybody choose to opt out? It sounds on the surface win, 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 win. What's the downside? Is there a downside? And I know you said you haven't heard of very much opposition, but we hear buzz, and people, I think, may do the opt-out thing simply because they don't want the decisions being made for them.
Yeah.
Unless, is there some other reason? That's kind of what I'm getting to. I know you said you haven't heard anything, but
yeah, they probably don't realize the decisions are already being made for them by this person or company they don't even know on their bill. So they might think that they're preserving a right that they've already given up. I mean, I think that's what's happening. And again, if they've already picked a third-party supplier, they're not going to, need to give that up, right? If they already contracted with some company, that's fine. They can stick with that company, no change at all. And I think that's really important. I think the reason there's an opt-out is because it could get to a situation where PSE&G lowers its rates for some reason through negotiated power that they have, and it becomes cheaper. Again, folks that are enrolled will get a notice and have the chance to opt out, and they would have to follow that procedure. But I think people who opted out from the beginning would be paying more for dirtier energy. And I would ask them that question. Why do you want to pay more for dirtier energy? Exactly. I don't know.
And that on the surface just seems like it's even more ridiculous to contemplate.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that PSE&G is still functioning as the separate entity. Why, given everything that you said thus far, why would anybody want to opt out? That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. Why would somebody choose to, as you said, have more expensive energy that's less clean? That makes no sense. There's a reason. I'm just looking for the reason. I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, I think we got to ask.
I am.
Yeah, no, I think we got to ask them. I think it's probably they don't really understand what's happening, which I don't either, because obviously there's really going on. But I think they just don't understand what's happening and what opting out would really mean. But some people are just against the machine, the man, the government, the other person who decides for me. Yeah.
And then I guess the corollary to that is that if PSE&G is on board with this, why would they institute something that's contrary to the aggregation that is going to take place if it makes it to the ballot, why would they then bring in a program that's more attractive?
So, I mean, they had to be told this by legislation and regulation. So it's not like PSE&G went out of its way and said, we'd like to not be responsible for generating your energy and then getting it to your house. Someone told them they had to stop that one half of the business so we can have a more competitive generation marketplace. So I think they're just following the laws. And, utilities are an unusual sort of piece of our economy. They're a for-profit that's highly regulated. And I'm sure they have, lots of reasons why they do the things that they're doing. But, like after Hurricane Sandy and Ida, they're also investing a lot in grid upgrades to make sure we have more consistent, reliable power, right? Putting power stations higher so they don't flood, and those kinds of things. And that's really important on the delivery side, but where you're getting your energy generated from, that they don't have any skin in the game, although they do own some electric generation. So I can't say that 100% sure. That's part of their business model. But for our purposes, those two are distinctly separate. And, they wouldn't put up opposition or support for it because they're still doing their job, which you're paying for, to make sure reliable, consistent power comes to your home. If there's a storm, they're patching up the wires, they're billing you and all the pieces that go with that. You mentioned the complication of something like worry-free or budget billing. They're still doing all that, and that's the service you're paying for on your bill. So they're still making money and providing us a service, which is, what we expect when we pay.
Do you have any idea what percentage of homeowners or households in Franklin are already signed up with alternative providers?
I don't, and I don't actually know statewide, but I think it's a very small percentage of folks. I've done, I would say pretty inaccurate polling, but everywhere I went when we were exploring this, I would ask folks, have you chosen a third-party supplier? And I can think of one person out of the 80 or so people we came in contact with in these conversations that had. It's a lot more work to take an action, right? To go online and research companies, then sign up, read all the fine print, to get your energy from somewhere else. And I think that's the barrier of entry that's being missed. And that's why I think energy aggregation is a really good thing, because we'll be taking the research out of your hands and out of your to-do list as well. And we're doing it with really strict criteria, with 5% savings and 10% more renewable energy. So we already have a criteria in mind that we're looking for companies, and we're going out to bid to make sure that they meet that threshold. So we're kind of doing the work for you. And I think that's our role as elected leaders in your community, to make your life easier and to make the community better. And I think the energy aggregation question does all of those things. Makes your life better because you don't have to worry about shopping around. We're going to save you some money, and we're going to get cleaner energy. And I think that's responsible municipal government. But with the question, we want to know that that's what you want us to do as well. And that's why, with the question that was proposed by the residents and the question that appears on the ballot, it's your chance to let us know, is this a direction that you want us to go and where you want us to spend our time, in addition to all the other great things that we do and the ones that we need to improve on, and I think for us, we have a very large consumer base. We'll be in a really strong position in the future energy markets to deliver some significant savings and better, cleaner energy.
I don't know why, but we had some comments that did not show up on our comment feed here. And there they are. Rich Seaman, I'm sure. He had a number of questions, and let me see if I can just pull my.
Now, Rich is an engineer, so they could be tough.
Yeah. He wants to know if PSE&G has the right to charge connect and disconnect fees when customers initially opt out or later opt back in.
No fees. No, they can't. Nope.
Okay. And does the aggregator have the right to charge connect or disconnect fees?
No.
Okay.
Because they're not connecting or disconnecting anything. It's really just a billing issue, right? Because they don't know how much energy used till they drive by your house. In the old days, they used to look at the meter and write a number down. Now
Right.
they do some over the airwaves. Then they know from last month to this month how much you used, and then they calculate how much was it to make that energy. You either pay the provider that we've aggregated through our bulk purchasing power, or you pay the default provider that PSE&G is contracted with. Either way, all PSE&G is doing is writing a check to whatever you selected. Yeah.
Okay. How long would the negotiated price be good for? What length of contracts would be negotiated by the township?
Yeah, we would probably do multi-years. Most towns do 2 years. And that's also why we built in the 5% savings, because it's hard to know 2 years in advance. The multi-year is helpful because the folks that are bidding, having that certainty is helpful. They also know that if their rate becomes not as competitive, which is hopefully why they'll bid it at a lower price, that folks will opt out. I mean, this has happened in some communities. But the communities that have had challenges didn't work closely with the committee that petitioned them. And the questions were written in such a way that the energy was almost guaranteed to be more expensive from day one. And so that was not a good scenario. And I think we learned from that pretty quickly in this effort.
Okay, he's got a couple more questions.
All right, Rich.
Who within the township would be responsible for developing the RFP, bidding the contract, and overseeing the contract?
And that's going to be the township manager and the staff that he designates. First step, though, is going to be the council, and I hope this is the case, that folks will overwhelmingly support this question. But once it's passed in that scenario, then the township council has to pass an ordinance that specifies all the parameters, how frequently we go out to bid, what happens if we don't get a bid, and those specifications. Then once that's passed, the work happens with the staff that are on the payroll of the township to do their work. And it's, we're not adding a whole nother job or something. They're going out to bid constantly. RFPs or requests for proposals or bids. They're happening all the time for roads, for simple things, sometimes even in our facilities for cars, et cetera. So this is a pretty known thing. And, it's not adding a whole lot of overhead to the work. It can fit into the space we have. It's normal operations for us.
And finally, he asks, will the ordinance require future town councils to agree to this process, or could future town councils choose not to approve?
So if it passes, and I hope it does, then we'll have to respond with an ordinance in some time frame. I think it's 6 months or something. We'll have to continue to aggregate our energy because we're under a mandate from the citizens. I believe it's 3 years.
Okay.
After that time, the council would be able, if it's not working, et cetera, to rescind the ordinance and stop doing the program. But again, there would have to be some pretty dynamic forces on the ground that would indicate the withdrawal of something that the voters have said they wanted to see. And I think that's why the two-part that's one of the benefits of the two-part scenario, where we're asking the public to weigh in and then council acting is helpful, because it's pretty clear if it passes that that's what folks in town want to see. So it's they're not under the mandate. You can really not bind future councils and boards for too long a period of time under municipal law. So that's the maximum.
Okay, that's all Rich asked. Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another quickie.
Sure.
Suppose this doesn't pass.
Well, I hope that's not the case. I really encourage everyone to vote yes, save more money, get more renewable energy. And I think it's good for everyone. If it doesn't pass, I think it would be a pretty sobering message, and we would really need to have further discussions as to figuring out, to your question, was what was it about why people voted no for it?
Exactly.
And determine, what course of action makes the most sense going forward. It's possible folks would have voted no for some unknown reason to us that's valid. I don't think that's the case. I mean, we've been working on this since, I think, January. And there's been a lot of rigor. We had an expert come in from an energy company to talk about it. We've talked to mayors and councils in other towns. We've worked with the petitioners. We've all read lots of materials to come up to speed on it. And so I don't think there's any surprises here. But I do think it would be a cause for reflection. But I don't think we entered into any of this lightly. We did our homework, and we did it in a very transparent way. If you remember, we had the Bob from, I think it was Gable Associates, come and present to council. We took questions from council, questions from the public. Then the Environmental Commission had an info session. They had someone from Sustainable Jersey. And Bob came back at that point from Gable Associates, talked about it in the library for an info session. And I think some people have thought that, Gable's already working for us. In fact, that's not the case. We would actually go out to get a consultant to do our energy aggregation proposal that would help us with the bidding process. And that person would get paid, but they wouldn't get paid by the town or the ratepayers. It would be part of the award of the bid. So it's only contingent on meeting our criteria for 5% savings and 10% or more renewable energy. So Gable was nice enough to kind of step up, and they do lots of work across the state very successfully, but there are other companies out there that work in that consulting role. And, if it's passed, we look at all of them and figure out what's best for the town going forward. But that, if it doesn't pass, which again, I hope it does, I think we'd have to, look at it some more and find out why that is from the community and figure out what our next steps are and how we can mitigate some of the concerns if they were, and if it's the right thing to do again on our own or go back out to the public again. I think it's unwritten. I think it's highly unlikely that's going to be the case. I think this is a no-brainer. Savings, more renewable energy. It's good for your wallet. It's good for the environment.
No, it's one of the reasons that we wanted to present this through you, because there are too many questions of what is it, how does it benefit me, which is usually the bottom line for at the proposal consideration of anything. What's in it for me, Franklin Township citizen? How does it benefit my home? How does it benefit my budget, etc. So it's one of the things that we're so grateful that you took the time to explain this, because an informed public is an informed public. And that's how they make the appropriate decisions when it comes to the public actually making the decisions. This is not a fait accompli. This is something where it is out, it's on the ballot. And Franklin, you have the responsibility to know what this is all about in order to make an informed decision. Which is, again, why we had Ed Potosnak, the League of Conservation Voters here, and also a town councilman, to explain as best possible what the tenets of this proposal are.
And I'm not alone in my support. So my organization has endorsed the question, but in addition, the Raritan Valley working group of the Sierra Club has endorsed the question, and Food and Water Watch has also endorsed and asked folks to vote yes on the question, because it's really good for the environment and a responsible thing for us to do, to use that bulk purchasing power. And just note too, like every town that does this a little bit different way. So what we're doing in Franklin doesn't necessarily, it's not the same thing as that's been done anywhere else. So I don't think we found a town that's done it the way we're doing it. We think it's very specific to meet our needs and responsible.
Are there any other Somerset County towns that have done it?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. We have a couple more questions from Michelle Yusko. And she writes, so essentially, a yes vote would allow the township to seek bulk sources of cleaner, affordable energy. Do I have this right?
You were listening. Yes.
Yes. And we then have the option to opt out at any time if we're not pleased with the findings.
Correct. If at any time you're unhappy, the prices change or whatever reason, you can opt out. It takes 30 days from when you fill out the form or fill out the web portal till you're removed. And then the next billing cycle, you'll be with the default provider from PSE&G or whoever else you chose from the plethora of third-party providers that exist.
Right. Well, thank you for the question, Michelle. Appreciate it. All right. I see by the clock on the wall or on the screen that you're in Hamilton?
I am, yeah.
You got a way to go yet before the council meeting tonight.
I know it's going to be tight. I'm going to stop for some food on the way too.
We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to thank you again, Ed Potosnak, Executive Director of the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, and also a Township Council member, for coming by the News Hour today and explaining through the prism of supporting the whole thing, but still explaining what energy aggregation is and what the benefits are. I mean, the way I see it, the only negative could be is if PSE&G is able to negotiate with its power provider a rate lower, and then if that happens, you just opt out.
And you'll get
Either that, or you try to renegotiate what the present situation is within the aggregation program, that you can try to be competitive with it. Although I'm not seeing what benefit that is to PSE&G or whomever to do that. It's contrary to what you're trying to accomplish.
They don't care because
I think that they should be on board with it, but
yeah,
they benefit in the long run.
PSE&G makes their money from delivery. They don't care who. I would imagine they don't care who supplies the energy. They're still going to get their whatever cents per kilowatt hour to deliver it.
And you have the ability, should PSE&G intervene on that level just to be competitive, you have the ability to adjust the structure in any way to compete back.
Well, if we're under contract, probably not till the end of the term. But yes, in the next contract we could. We could see what happened and learn from that and make adjustments. We think, given historical energy trends, the 5% savings is a good buffer that we don't think it's likely PSE&G's default provider is going to dip below that. And so it's highly unlikely, that folks would even need to opt out in that scenario. But if it were to happen, they always have that option. And we'd be very aggressive in letting folks know. Is
there any way you can make a dynamic contract so that, just like I guess how people trade on the stock market sometimes, where if a stock goes below a certain level, it triggers an action. Or if it goes above a certain level, it triggers an action. Is there a way that you guys can write a contract that if PSE&G comes out with an energy supplier price that's lower than what you guys have negotiated, that it triggers your contract to
readjust?
Right. It's something we've talked about. I haven't gotten a solid answer. We haven't gotten to that perspective, but it is something that we considered, and I think we'd have to work with whoever we choose if the question's passed, right, to be our consultant to help us write that request for a bid such that it, kind of accounts for as many things as we can that's legally allowed. And this energy stuff is pretty complicated. And so really having that consultant is going to be helpful because it's something they do all the time and they know what the limits are because it's regulated by the Board of Public Utilities in Trenton.
Okay. Do you see, is this, I'm sorry, I had one more quick question. Okay. Do you see this percentage as a fixed percentage during the duration of however long this program is in place? Or is there anything built in that perhaps in 2 years the percentage of savings escalates to 7 or 8%?
So it's at least. So that means
it begins at 5%. That's not the ceiling.
Correct. So if we think by talking to the consultant, the energy market is so great right now that we can save 30% and still get 10% more renewable energy, then that's something we're going to write and see, do we get that, right? I think most of it depends on what percentage of renewable energy we're looking for. So the other way to say is we could go out for 10%. We could go out for 25% more renewable energy in the state. And then the cost would come back and we'd choose the cheapest one. If the cheapest one's 30% less, that's going to be, like you mentioned, Bill, like, well, what is it for 5%? Doesn't sound like much. Hey, I should admit it's at least 5%. So it could be more.
Okay, that's not the ceiling was what I was getting at. Okay. Yeah. Now, suppose that would happen in the middle of the contract. Would there be any sort of an automatic adjustment, which I think is what you were talking about, Bill?
Yeah, that's
what dynamic contract.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. We would love to do it if we can. Certainly.
If you can, but there's not a provision that says you absolutely cannot. You have the flexibility if.
That I'm not sure. We haven't really gotten that. That's a much more in-depth discussion, and quite frankly, I think we need to contract with a consultant who knows by spending the time and helping us with that, if the contract was successful, they would get paid. People work for money, and there's only so much you can ask them to do on a pro bono basis, you know, as we're kind of figuring it out. So we didn't go down that road out of respect for the time. But yeah, we would love to do that if we could.
All right.
Cool.
Now, somebody who has not gotten all their questions answered tonight, or for whatever reason has not tuned in, how is more information available to someone?
Yeah, so the Franklin Township website has a page dedicated to presenting the question as it reads on the ballot and other frequently asked questions that have been sort of around. So you can visit franklintownshipnj.org/GEA. GEA, so Government Energy Aggregation. That's what it stands for, GEA. And then it has a frequently asked question sheet. And you can also reach out to me. My email address is on the website, as well as my phone number, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And if we get enough of them, we'll add them to the frequently asked question page.
And we'll put a link to that site on our description of
Definitely.
That'd be great.
Definitely.
All right, we're going to let you go because I know you got a long drive. So, Potosnak, thank you so much for coming in and clearing this up a little bit. I can say I have a better handle on what this is all about. So I appreciate that.
Yes,
Awesome.
Knowledge is power. Ed, thank you so much. You're such a shining light on just saving the planet and just focusing that saving and that the betterment of Franklin Township. We really appreciate it.
I got to keep a recording of that in my pocket for me.
Yeah, right.
So thank you, PJ. I appreciate it.
All right.
We'll see you guys in a little bit.
All right, Ed Potosnak, Executive Director of New Jersey League of Conservation Voters and Township Councilmember. We'll see you again. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Let me get us set up here. I think that did it. Hello.
There we go. Hello.
All right. Well, that was interesting.
Yeah, I think I know I have a better understanding of the whole program as well. And it's, if I'm permitted to editorialize, it does sound like it's positive. I'm not finding a negative, except the umbrella of it's somebody else making that decision for me. Well, you can opt out. If you make the decision to opt in and you don't see that it benefits you on a personal level, it does not decrease to the degree that you would be happier, and you don't feel like your environment is being helped in any way, then you have the option to remove yourself from it. So this it's certainly flexible.
Yeah, and he makes a good point when he says that some people who may be opposed to this are of the mindset that they don't want someone making the decision for them. When he says that, well, they've already done it, so
it's already in place.
The
decision is already in place. This is an adjustment to the pre-existing.
It's just swapping out
exactly
the back end for PSNG's choice for the township's choice, and I don't know.
Well, it's the township at large, which is the constituency, which is every one of us who has registered to vote and who actually will go to the polls to vote on what's a very important, even though it's the question on the ballot, it's not the candidates, the names and the personalities. This is an important question, Franklin. And I hope you've gotten enough information. And again, as Ed Potosnak directed you to go to the Franklin Township page, franklintownshipnj.org. Is it /GEA?
Yes.
Or the energy aggregation portion to get any more information that you would need in order to make an informed decision that you are completely pleased with.
Yes.
So it sounds flexible, and it sounds like I don't mind breathing
something
cleaner air.
Definitely to
what
look.
About you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Something definitely to look into to think
Yes.
about. Speaking of websites, Franklin, if you want the most complete report on what's going on in Franklin Township, that's your. How am I doing this? There you go. That's your source.
Follow the bouncing index finger.
Yes, franklinreporter.com. The guys on YouTube do this all the time. They know exactly where to point. They do this and whatever. franklinreporter.com. If you have a news tip or a complaint, because I get all the complaints, you can send them to editor@franklinreporter.com. If you would like to support this venture that we have been going on now for the past 9 years, you can contact PJ Parker at ads@franklinreporter.com.
And I have to interrupt you when you say support. Yes, that is absolutely a part of what we do. However, your advertising is seen by the people who want to know what's going on in Franklin Township. They want to read the stories of that which matters to all of us. The stories about schools, the stories about traffic, the stories, as you can see, about energy and our environment, how your tax dollars are being spent, what's going on with open space, what's going on with the Kmart building. If you want to read about Franklin Township, the Franklin Reporter and Advocate family of publications is where you're going to find it.
Absolutely.
And you, as an advertiser, you get to align yourself with people who want to know what's going on in Franklin Township. They're reading it there, and there's your advertising. Benefit from the interest that people have in their own backyard, and you're going to find it at the Franklin Reporter and Advocate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we are on social media. Twitter. We're on Twitter at Franklin Editor. Obviously, we're on Facebook because most of you are watching this right now on Facebook at Franklin Reporter. We're on Insta, and
Right.
that's a mouthful. We are.
Just
we
look
are.
up Instagram and type in Franklin.
Yes, I don't have a link for TikTok. I now and then I'll do a TikTok thing.
Okay.
I during the last football game against Plainfield, I did some TikToks during the course of the game, and it was seen by like 12 people. But
Well, actually, I would like to commend Bill Bowman on his bicycle riding for the RCDCU prostate cancer bicycle ride, where he made frequent stops and TikToked his performance and his progress along the ride.
Level of exhaustion.
Yeah, you did what, 25 miles?
Something like that. 20,
That's
25.
amazing.
I don't remember what the length was.
Really, that's amazing, Franklin. And Bill Bowman was obviously not the only rider. There were so many people out there supporting the effort to raise funds to beat prostate cancer.
Yes.
And the RCDCU is one of the best organizations that we have in our community. And I'm thrilled that we can support it in the way that we do. But Bill's TikToking garnered many views, and people wanted to know, where is the editor today? Bill Bowman is TikToking his way through the bike path to support the defeating of prostate cancer.
Do a day in the life and just that's what I'm doing every day. Here I am. I'm going to the post office now. Oh, nothing in there. What else is there? That sort of thing.
Yeah, maybe we'll skip that.
So, folks, if you're thinking about what you're going to be watching during the rest of the week, tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, were you reading my mind?
That's funny. Tomorrow at 5:30, we're going to have I think it's going to be an interesting. Not that they're not interesting, but this is actually national in scope. We're going to be talking to Assemblyman Joe Danielson, who has a gun bill making its way through the legislature dealing with concealed carry. And it's said to be, and a bunch of other different things in terms of insurance requirements and things like that. But it's said to be, I mean, New Jersey already has a pretty tough gun law, but it's said to be going to be the toughest gun law in the country. And apparently there are already people lining up to take it to court based on what happened in New York State. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday at 5:30, October 26th. October 27th will be our annual candidates night for Board of Education members. And that's at 7:00. So,
and I think we have most of the candidates.
Yeah, most of the candidates, yes. I think we have 4 of 6 who so far confirmed that they're going to be there.
Mm-hmm. We would like to extend that invitation to those who have not responded yet. We'd like to have the full panel of all of you who are putting your hats into this candidates ring. Yeah. The Board of Education is one of the more important institutions that you can be supportive of.
Absolutely.
participate in it. If you have something that's going to benefit the students of Franklin Township and you have put your hat in the ring, please let Franklin Township know who you are and what you stand for.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very important to have the entire slate of candidates. So if you're listening, candidates who have not responded yet, please respond. editor@franklinreporter.com. Let Bill Bowman know that you are indeed going to be part of that panel.
Yeah. And I've already sent out the link. I've already
Mhm.
started the broadcast, reserved the broadcast time. So everybody should have a link.
Mhm.
Participants should have a link. Um,
And again, it's about being informed for
Yes.
those of us who are voting for you. It is important for us to know who you are, what you stand for, and what you bring to the Board of Education table. And
Right.
unless you show up and unless you talk about it, people are not going to know who you are.
You would think they would.
We may miss a very valuable opportunity to
Yep.
get to know you and make a decision as to if you are the right person to serve on our Board of Education.
Exactly. All right. I think that wraps it up. What do you think?
I think we're busy, and
We're
I think that's great.
Right.
I know that we are also in the process of speaking with Senator Bob Smith, who has been behind some of the noise
Oh, he's
issues
got two
behind
ban of
gas blowers and a few
power.
other things.
Gas power.
Yes, and that has not been confirmed yet, Franklin. But I
No.
know it's an issue that has been brought up in our community as well. So, but we're in the process of having him be a guest on our news hour to give us a report on the updates of these two bills.
Right. All right. Well, Franklin, that does it for the October 25th edition of the Franklin Reporter and Advocate News Hour. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for watching for those of you who weren't able to tune in while it was live.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see you next time. And until then, Franklin, stay safe. And PJ, say what you always say.
Well, we thank you for tuning in, Franklin. We're happy to bring you the news. And we'll be back.
Okay.